to their futures. Soldiers speak out. 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 Soldiers speak out.
Hello, my name is Dennis Mills, and welcome to the Veterans for Peace Hour here in Olympia, Washington. We want to especially thank the studios of TCTV. My guest with me today is Molly Gibbs. Welcome, Molly.
Well, thank you.
Molly and I will be sharing together tonight and today, however you may be watching, on militarization of our children and counter-recruitment. There are several things that we want to cover, and I'm just going to show a PowerPoint slide so that you can see what we're going to cover today. One of them is on war toys. There's a whole list of things that I found as an educational researcher that our children are exposed to war toys from the very, very early days. And then we take a look at media, particularly commercials, public service announcements. And then we're moving into an area where Molly is especially concerned, and that is as we get into the No Child Left Behind, or sometimes I call it No Child Left Unrecruited. Perhaps that's one that you're familiar with. And she's also going to share with us the whole area of militarized schoolrooms in our JROTC. And on marketing databases. And I've invited Molly to share with me as we now take a look at some of the toys that are out there. But one of the things that I really want to share with you is a statement that Mahatma Gandhi made. And that is, if we're to have real peace, we must begin with children. And, you know, I think some of the people said if we're going to have real war, we must begin with children, because you're going to see some things that I think are very interesting. You know, just recently on the radio, Michael Savage said, they're training their sons to use AK-47s, and we're teaching our sons how to swing a baseball bat. Tell me who wins that fight. I have nothing against baseball, but the times don't call for an obsession with sports. They call for a militarization of our children. Isn't that scary, Molly?
It's real frightening. Yeah.
And so I take a look at some of the things that we're going to take a look now and challenging the militarization of toys and its effect. Now, some of our listening audience may remember the Mouseketeers, M-I-C-K-Y-M-O-U-S-E. Yes, that was it. And that was the very first one that came up with a World II inspired gun, and it got its boost in 1959. Friends, that was when the beginning of TV marketing of war toys began.
And think about the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes, following in 1963.
Just building up that whole Cold War era.
And now let's take a look at some of those toys that are out there. Molly, you remember Paddington Bear? What did Paddington Bear mean to you or your kids?
Oh, gosh, I think of just comfort, how bears were just these, you know, teddy bears. Were
cuddling up to. Yeah, it was a source of comfort. And yet, what do we have now? We have dress, blues, teddy bear. Let's take a look at that picture again. Paddington Bear is now in a dressed blue Marine uniform, standing at attention, sword in hand. Isn't that peaceful? And he's every inch an American hero. But not to be outdone, we have the Navy. So we have a Navy teddy bear as well. So this is a whole thing that we're starting to see for very, very small children now.
You know, you look at that picture is so apt in terms of being just precious. It's quite tender, and there's this cute little bear. And that's part of this messaging that's quite phenomenal.
And yet he's dressed in his crisp white uniform of a sailor in this case.
Right.
Ready and willing to serve wherever he has to go. And you know, we have some very interesting things that has happened, particularly after September 11th. And one of those happened to be these pararescuers. And so here's a toy that is filled with an M16 ammo pouch and 2 grenades, a bayonet, 45 pistol. These are toys that young children can play with. Back in '93, remember when we were involved in Mogadishu? Well, that spawned a whole Matt, the U.S. Army Ranger, where we had these toys. And this one is especially disturbing to me. I don't know if it's disturbing to you, Molly, but this is G.I. Joe. Now, we grew up with G.I. Joe, but G.I. Joe has become very, very interesting in the fact this is the crowd control police. Let me ask you, Molly, where's the crowd? Who's the crowd that a 5-year-old is trying to control? And what tools does he have or she have to control?
Boy, there's something here about a young child and getting just used to fear. And I start thinking about fear and anger and how much this is woven into use of these toys. And it's a very, it is disturbing.
Well, let's look at that picture again, because these are the toys that, remember, a 5-year-old would be playing with. And what are those toys that we're seeing? A shotgun, a stun grenades, all kinds of things. And this is not for going overseas to the enemy. This is the crowd control. Where?
In your backyard?
Your backyard. Your parents, perhaps, you're trying to control. Who knows? But, you know, there are some movies that have been out. Platoon, I remember, that was inspired by the Vietnam era. And so we have toys that fully action characters, movie-inspired figures that people will play with. Perhaps one of the most disturbing ones for me, Molly, is the one that our viewing audience is watching now. And this is a bullet-riddled shell of a house, complete with soldiers. And you notice upstairs, there is a soldier there, and that's a sniper. It's a forward command post, but notice the age for this toy, 5 years old. And for other children, they have a model for 3-year-olds. And guess what? If you want to cover all the militaries in the world, you can even have an ethnic situation where you can change it to brown skin versus white skin. And the ad, which is probably the most disturbing, is sure to excite the bloodthirsty passions in even the most passive of preschoolers. How does that grab you as a person looking at the toys that are out there?
I think values, I can't imagine spending, 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day working for a company like this. The whole thing connects for me around the lack of concern about violence in our society. It's everywhere, and I am quite alarmed in terms of I don't believe people are seeing it. The movies that we go to see, just watching my son grow up, just totally relaxed with...
Well, they've never experienced this one, Molly. This next slide, I want to show what the actual reality is. In 2002, I went into Palestine. That is the picture. That is the reality. That's the site of a building where an American missile fired by an Israeli warship or helicopter, an Apache helicopter, Boeing's, fired into. There's a building right next to an American Friends school, totally destroyed. Victims, innocent victims, type thing. That's the reality. Well, the people that created the toys heard such a furor over this one. Matter of fact, they had to take it off the shelves in Shelton. People wrote in and said, "How dare you sell this one?"
Yes.
And thankfully, they removed it from the shelf. But then the manager told me, sadly, we were back ordered. Can you believe that? They were back ordered with that particular toy. Now they have a new one, and this next slide shows a 2-story command center with action figures. And you'll notice this one's a 96-piece set for what age, Molly?
Can't 4-year-olds choke on these little pieces?
Well, sure they can, but it's a cleaned up, sterilized vision of what war looks like, but it's where you could actually stage your own war in your backyard. and you have a 96-piece set. Can you imagine how our kids become militarized over a period of time when they have these toys to play with?
Right.
Well, here's one for an age 5 person. This has all the lights and battle sounds. Can you imagine parents and now grandparents who actually went through, in my age group, Vietnam era? They are very familiar with the sounds.
Right.
And so here's the toy that their grandchild's going to play with, has all the lights and sounds. It actually fires soft-tipped darts. Batteries required, so it makes the sounds for a 5-year-old.
So you can set off PTSD in your
Oh,
own
absolutely.
household? Yeah.
And here's one where I laugh when I see this one, but it's not really that funny. It's an intelligence headquarter so that a 5-year-old can become an intelligence officer. I jokingly say, well, maybe if they play with this, we might get a little smarter intelligence officers today. But really, when we take a look at it, it's pretty sad when you take a look at that these are the toys, a 47-piece set that they're going to be playing with. And this one just really irritates me tremendously. It's for a 3-year-old. It's unassembled, but it actually shoots plastic shells. So can you imagine your 3-year-old running around on this tank shooting plastic shells? And my question to you is, shoot at whom?
And then I think about imported from China. So what is it made of? And
yes,
who's paying for for what in this scenario? Who's paying for the war?
yes.
What is our debt? So I mean, that was a lot to take in a few minutes, and at the same time, it was plenty. It really concerns me deeply that what we're teaching our kids is a numbness to violence and war. It's everywhere. We don't think about it. I mean, at my house, you're in a beautiful setting, but there are bombs dropping in the background, and the windows are shaking.
Yes, the sounds of freedom.
Right.
Yes.
So the use of words and communication come up for me as what I really want to focus on for something positive in terms of bringing back skills of conflict resolution, mediation, and making sure that we're able to focus on what we've learned and what we can change.
Yes.
So what can we do about this?
And yet we now have age 3 people who can play as world peacekeepers. Now, when you hear the word world peacekeeper, what do you think, Molly?
Well, of course, I think of, using my words and
Here's what
mediating.
the toy industry thinks of as world peacekeepers for 3-year-olds. Can you see this set here? I mean, there is one carrying a bazooka in the far right-hand corner. And yet, this is for a 3-year-old. Every 3-year-old needs a bazooka that can make sounds, and riding tanks and forward command posts. What were they thinking? And yet this one is probably the most insidious one that I've come across. What is the career of this particular G.I. Joe collection? A long-range sniper. And again, for young age groups. And, we're now equal opportunity employers now. Homeland Security Amy. Hey, it's no longer G.I. Joe. And after all, hey, she has her own M16A2 rifle. How about that, Molly? Not bad, huh? We have a magazine-fed, air-cooled, gas-operated M16A2 rifle. So there's a doll that the girls can play with.
Yeah.
And there are other action figures. This one happens to be a night ops one for a 5-year-old. Well, what do night ops do? They don't stay up late at night, just waiting. It's tremendous. And yet here, hey, it's a wonderful weather. Finally returned to the Pacific Northwest. What are we going to do? Well, we get to play in our tunnel combo, our command headquarters.
Yeah.
Again, 3 years old can play in this one. And we can have, for those that I remember when I used to have model airplanes as a kid. Now we have Black Hawk helicopters for 4-year-olds. And, this is a helicopter that was actually used to attack Palestinian buildings and civilians. So There's the real picture below, and there's the toy up above, the night attack chopper. And then we have for the 4-year-old, we have the Elite Force Humvee in the desert camo. Another scale version of the same thing. Probably one of the most humorous things for us as adults was seeing the Elite Force Aviator, George W. Bush, fly in on a aircraft carrier, and soon afterwards they came up with a 12-inch action figure, and they had to have orders waiting all over to be fulfilled. So many people wanted to have this action hero to play with, an Elite Force Aviator, a war hero. How about that? One of the most interesting things that happened was at Easter time. Kmart and Walgreens had baskets, but for their Easter season, with the beans and all the other things that they put, the jelly beans, whatnot. But they decided to put in Super Warriors battle set and Peacekeepers and military men play sets and toy assault rifles in an Easter egg basket, commanded by armored men with shaved heads and sunglasses. Now, wasn't that real interesting? And I went to their website, and it said, meant to be lighthearted and a fun gift. Well, can you imagine that there were some people that said, excuse me? Well, Kmart and Walgreens had to, they had their traditional chocolate bunny as the centerpiece, but it had been displaced by the camouflage soldiers holding machine guns, grenades, large knives. Rite Aid and Walmart stores expected to have their baskets arrive, but after a while they had to pull them just because of the furor that was involved on that one. Here's a screenshot that actually shows the action hero inside of a Easter egg basket.
I don't think Jesus would have approved.
That might have been a bit of a stretch there, yes. But hold it. There are pet lovers in our viewing audience, and they actually have war toys for pets. I happen to have a Labrador. Oh, well, one toy that she doesn't have is the camouflage fighter jet Fatigue. Get it? Fatigue?
Right.
So, hey, your pet will never be fatigued now. They're playing with fatigues because when they squeeze the sound of this pet jet fighter, it makes a war sound. Well, won't that irritate? I said, in this case, won't this be just appropriate for a pet? What do war toys actually teach children?
Well, war is a game. It's an exciting adventure.
Yes, and we saw some of those toys. It looks pretty exciting. But, more importantly, I think they also teach that killing is acceptable, maybe even fun.
Yeah. Well, violence, as I've mentioned, is certainly a concern. The threat of violence is the only way to resolve conflicts.
Yeah, did you see anything on resolving conflict nonviolently in these toys? No, they weren't there at all. And perhaps even more disturbing is they seem to divide the world into what our kids would say the goodies and the baddies, where the bad guys are devoid of any human qualities. And their destructions, well, hey, it's even desirable. What else does it do, Molly?
Well, it certainly creates, us and them.
Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? There's two sides. It's black and white.
Good and bad, black and white.
And we can solve all arguments by fighting. And how about the use of guns and other war equipment as toys? We saw that with just the examples there.
And I think there's a lot of praising and rewarding the use of violence and physical strength rather than, using your head or your heart to solve something.
Absolutely. And we also saw that some of these toys are used to start fights and make enemies, not friends, or resolve things nonviolently.
So, I think when people let their children play with these toys, there's really a belief that I know I've heard young soldiers coming back talk about that they really didn't have any idea what war was really like. Because all of the toys that were in childhood, up through video games, they just are interesting I don't know,
Well, and
toys.
they really never saw people as suffering or definitely not dying in
No.
war. And you and I have both listened to returning Iraq vets whose lives are forever changed because they never realized that or had ever seen a person die before,
Right.
or suffer. Yet the toys they played with growing up, that was there. And it seems like, you know, when children play with war toys, it makes war seem like, well, that's an okay thing to do.
I think the two of the movies lately that I've seen, The Body of War.
Yes, Body of War.
And the other one, In the Valley of Elah.
Okay.
I think are two really outstanding films that really show what the effects of war are.
What war is really about.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if we were going to start really talking with our kids about war and what has happened as a result. I mean, I got into this work because I worked with Vietnam vets.
Yes.
And my first job was in mental health, and so they shut down all the state hospitals. And so the vets were coming to our communities. So again, think about today. Vets are going to be coming home. There are not enough people to counsel all of the PTSD. And the exposure to depleted uranium is huge. There's so many issues that will prevent these young people from having any sort of normal life.
And if they've been in a war zone, they will have issues, regardless of what they say. If you're watching and you're a returning veteran from Iraq or from Afghanistan, we would really encourage you to reach out in some of the resources that are available off post where you do not have to report to your commanding officer or to any other person there that would affect your career, but that you would get the help, because we know that you have been through things that you should have never been able to have gone through, and it will affect you for a long time, and there are resources.
Contact IVAW.
IVAW.org,
Yeah,
yes.
definitely.
You know, another thing that when children play war, they learn to think that people seem, their people are better than other people. Have you noticed that? I'm on the good side.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it makes you think about, think again about language. They're the communists, they're the terrorists, they're the Muslims, they're the, this horrific putting people in categories, which has nothing to do with who they are, how they think, what their values are.
Well, you suppose we're going to have Muslim kin and Al-Qaeda Annie or something to play with now?
I don't even want to think about it.
Yes. Well, one of the other things that we're seeing now that war toys do is they make boys seem more important than girls, Molly.
Yeah, that can be, yes.
Did you know that there is an international legislation on war toys? Sweden and Norway have a successful voluntary restriction on the sale of war toys. And Malta prohibits their import altogether. Greece bans television advertising. Do you see advertising that highlights war toys and things? Yes, indeed. Greece doesn't allow it. And Australia places some restrictions on imports. How about this one, Molly? The European Parliament's recommending that its member states, the EU, ban advertising of war toys and reduce their sale.
Yeah, that haunts me a bit, I think, Dennis, about the young women who are serving now and the women that I've met who really aspire to, again, serving their country and doing something of value. And I think what's really heartbreaking is somehow we're not, in our education system, in our family time, we're not working enough with our kids about what's going on in the world and how it's going to affect all of us. Somehow we have a myth that if the war is over there, it's not going to affect us.
No.
I had probably a few years ago, it was 3 or 4 years ago, driving to work, the most profound radio announcement I think I've heard just hit me in a certain way. And on NPR, there were interviews of people in Washington, D.C. And the question was, how has the war in Iraq affected you? And 4 people said, oh, it hasn't affected me in any way. It hasn't affected me at all.
Didn't touch them.
And the 5th woman interviewed was a woman in the South, a Southern accent. She was black, and she said that she had just lost her son, and that she was crying. I mean, I had to pull over. If that is what we've somehow created, this entire myth, lock, stock, and barrel, that the war's over there and it has nothing to do with me. Oh, all I can think about is let's think about what happened in Germany after Hitler, after World War II. The German people suffered horribly around their involvement, and that's what we face in this country. We have a lot of recognizing and honoring the sacrifice of our soldiers. And to turn our soldiers into these toys is just
and we've
horrific.
Desensitized our whole population on this one. You know, Molly, Hasbro is one of the more popular toy makers. You know, Mattel's another, but Hasbro. Did you know that Hasbro actually was using the toy manufacturers to get images of their future, their effort? The U.S. Soldier Systems Center in Nautique said that in several cases the center provided toy manufacturers with images of their future efforts. And the objective Force Warrior, the next generation of uniform equipment for soldiers with a helmet, integrates the scopes and communication devices. Do you remember seeing pictures of the Iraq vets? That came across there. Hasbro, you know, says that, well, the Army might not have some of the toys that they have until 2010. They've been using that. You know, it's a $20.3 billion toy industry. They're closely watching the Iraq War with an eye towards the next introduction of their Christmas toys. And they're seated next to the television set and flipping through the same news weeklies and military enthusiastic magazines, because it's a $10.3 billion video game industry as well.
Well, it's huge, and I think when you add to that the amount of money that's the Pentagon makes a huge amount of money doing all of the special effects for movies.
Yes.
So there's multi-million-dollar industry there.
Well, you know, in a most interesting thing was that the toy that a lot of the soldiers have been using, the M16, didn't come from the military. You know, it came from Mattel. And Mattel made a small toy that people could play, and it looked like a toy, but it wasn't a toy. And the military says, boy, we should use this too as an inexpensive battlefield tool. And so now we see some of the pictures here of soldiers that are using some of the toys that Mattel created for the military. And inspiration, you know, in many of these toys came from toys. You know, you think of the airplanes. Well, now you have the reconnaissance drones.
Right.
Okay, or the Super Soaker water guns. Well, those were quick-loading assault weapons. The cheap cellular phones for teenagers. Well, those were video-capable walkie-talkies.
Wow.
That are out there. And the gaming control panels for the unmanned robotic vehicles. There is a research done by Dr. Murray at the MRI Imaging Research, and he said that the brain treats entertainment violence, and you mentioned the video games and other things. It treats entertainment violence as something significant and something real, and it stores this violence as long-term memory. And another thing he said is that when children watch violent movies, and goodness knows we've seen violent movies that are out there, they know they're watching make-believe scenes. They know it's make-believe. But, and here's the big but, their brains process the images as real. and they store those images in the same place where real-life traumatic events are stored. So we see veterans coming back, Molly, that have post-traumatic stress disorder. And that part of their brain is in the same part that the children who watch these make-believe or the video things share. He's also said the following, that children store memories of violent entertainment images in the same brain, basically where the veteran stores their PST memories, or where women store memories of rape. And finally, where children are forming indelible memories, and adding that these memories are quickly recalled and can be used as guides for future behavior. Now that's pretty frightening.
Well, so moving on.
Yes. We see a second part that we have, Molly, and what is that part? It is the part where we have public service announcements, billboards, other type of things that is really trying to attract the people that you've been working with. You know, just recently Walmart had the, you know, if you go to buy a television set, you walk by, and what did you see? You saw images of recruiting for the military. And we've had the Army's video games coming on. What's so bad about that, Molly?
Well, again, I mean, why are we trying to militarize our youth?
You know, one of the things that is on there on the bullet points there is that the military can track those who score well. So if they're playing this game, they can do it. But you know, you say, well, okay, I'll go online. And even online, there's Vietnam War games online. And again, people can track that. And you have the recruiting ads. And we're going to get into your portion of the program now where we're saying that recruiting. And, you know, they get more recruiting because the more they show these recruiting ads, the more opportunity they have. And their one claim they said is that the internet site generates 1 recruit per 20 leads.
Wow.
You know, I'm finding that something. You know, most recently, they had a Hispanic, and this is true, listed right out of high school, a person from Hispanic background. He was killed in Iraq. Well, this is one of the most popular recruiting ads in the Hispanic community. Well, the Army pulled that ad very quickly after the community realized that he had passed away. Well, we're going to get into yours section now, Molly, and that is the no child left behind, and what we often say is no child left unrecruited. And so tell us about, or how we can know all we can know.
Well, I think part of what we're working on is trying to pull together some volunteers in the community to help us get some good information out to school board members. We've had a couple of really good summer camp experiences, but what we've found by and large, Dennis, is that students who are middle class, who believe they're going to college, that they're going to be going off to school in the fall of following their senior year, most are not at all interested in military service. And we're very clear, it's been really clear, there are 2 at-risk groups that
Two at-risk groups.
Yeah, and I think part of what we've identified, we'd love to be doing more with Hispanic students. We have lots of copies of Adicto de la Guerra, and this
Addicted to War.
Yeah, is a really excellent book because it starts to give you a thorough overview. The U.S. has been involved in militarism for well over 100 years, and well, since its beginning, really. But we don't, again, it's much like the focus on military selling toys, making toys. We make war, it's part of what we do, it's a huge part of our economy. So I think our youth need more kind of straightforward, honest information about the role of war in our country and in our schools. And why do we militarize our youth? Because we need to recruit them. So right now, I think it's important, Dennis, to have a perspective to realize that Blackwater and other mercenary forces are far greater number than our U.S. military.
Yes. Yes.
Much bigger group. And I think there's beginning to be a bit of focus on torture, a little bit of focus on the role of our Congress. Our Congress has failed in terms of taking a strong stand against the war. Some of us are quite concerned about what happens in the upcoming election. I've been reading myself about John F. Kennedy and who he was, which I had no idea as a child. There was a digressive for a minute, but I think it's very relevant to today. John F. Kennedy was assassinated by our government, by our security state, and that was because he refused to send people to war. He would not send our troops at that time, all young men, but would not send them into Laos. He would not send them into Cuba. He would not send them into Vietnam. And he, for all of those reasons, he was assassinated. And our CIA was a big part of that. And the Pentagon. The Joint Chiefs were not happy with, his choice to try to resolve things. His conversations with Nikita Khrushchev were phenomenal. So they were working towards nuclear disarmament. But, I just end with when John F. Kennedy gave a speech the last year of his life at American University. That speech was never aired here. I never heard about it. I mean, I was a kid, a little kid. But I don't remember ever hearing in any history class any of this information. And I think our kids need to know the truth about our relationship with militarism.
How can a young Hispanic person know about this one? Because I doubt if they see this in their classroom.
Well, usually not, but this little booklet, there are 4 copies I just mailed to Shelton, and they'll soon be in the Shelton High School. We have several copies of Adicto de la Guerra, is also at Mason County Literacy, and there are several copies, a dozen or so, at Cielo Radio Ranch here in Olympia. Okay. These are in our high schools.
How do the military recruiters get access to the kids in high school? I mean, I'm a career educator. I taught 2nd grade all the way through graduate school. Right. And up came No Child Left Behind. Uh-huh. And I was teaching college at that time, and all of a sudden, we nicknamed this huge bill, yes, No Child Left Unrecruited. Right. Now, you've come across stories of, they're in the schools. How did the military get into the schools? No Child Left Behind I used to know the page number, but something like page 654. Oh, well read by all of our legislators. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Well, there's a little piece on that page that says that if a school district refuses to subscribe to this, if you refuse to allow recruiters in the schools, give them full access, you'll lose your federal funding. Mm. So in a few cases on the East Coast, a couple of school districts did refuse the funding, essentially, and did refuse to allow recruiters in. They were certainly approached by the military after that, but essentially that is the drawing card. That's where the military gets their permission. So if I send my child to a public school, mm-hmm, I have no control as a parent over the access to my child in that school? Yes, you do. But you have to know about Section 9528. Okay. You are able to opt out, and your high school students, 11th and 12th grade, should also be able to opt out themselves. So the opt-out form, this is really important because it differs in every school. Every high school handles it a little differently. In North Thurston, those forms are mailed to you. We ask that they mail them to every student.
and they did do that.
So why don't you walk us through this whole opt-out process so that our viewing audience will have a clear picture of that?
Okay. Well, what we did and what many folks around the state have done is we put together a group, and I think you participated in that. But we had a veteran, a parent, a student, a teacher, and there were 5 of us who went. I joined as the director of the program, but we went to talk with our superintendents.
Yes, the school administrators, the head school administrators.
Right. And we went a few times. And first I sent a letter out. We all worked on the letter. We made it real clear what we were asking for that particular district. And then we followed it up. We went and met with them, discussed it. We're promised some things would change.
Did some of them change?
Some did. Tumwater has not. I don't know what they've done at all. But that was one way that we had some good discussion, some dialogue about what was required by law and what students needed to be able to do if they chose to do so. We did spend 1 year in a couple of the high schools in the North Thurston district. It wasn't very effective. We were in a lunchroom. Students there in some of those schools have very short lunch breaks, and they were literally running by, getting ready to go to the next class. So they didn't know who we were or what we were doing. There are other more effective ways. All of us, I think, doing this work in Western Washington would indicate that it's much better to work with students. So you have some clubs. You can try to work through student clubs and have someone who's available to work with the students so that they can do what they want to do and get information out, have some sort of organizing around an activity. They might pick one activity for that year. And then I always worked with college students to connect them with high school students.
Closer age bracket there.
It's much better than the 58-year-old going in,
Tell me about this concept of opt-in versus opt-out when it comes to this area.
Opt-in makes enormous sense because it follows our right to privacy in terms of Right to Privacy Act. And I encourage people to look on the website and read. I'll talk in a minute about jammers and explain what that is. But the right to privacy would only follow naturally that you give your consent to have your information used. Think even online. God knows that it really is very effective, but you're still routinely asked if you want to have someone send you emails, if you want to be contacted, if you want to give away your email address. The critical thing about No Child Left Behind and opt-out is all of your students' information is going to the military, and I mean everything. So the profile on my child would be they'd know his grade point average, they'd know what subjects he took, they would know what he was really interested in. If your child is performing well in sports, they have everything out of the local newspaper. It tells the scores, who the players are. If you were in a play, they know that...
Do parents know these things?
I don't think a lot do, no.
Do the school districts notify parents that this type of information is being collected as a whole?
I haven't seen it. I think there are also a number of things. So that's important. The opt-out form, I would also say, with the opt-out form, you need to start doing it now in 9th grade.
Okay.
I would do it all through high school, and you have to do it every year. If you turn one form in, be careful. Don't believe that that's going to last for all of high school. I know of one school district that I believe it's Seattle that has just done that. So. And
we do have a form on there right now, a slide that really talks about the No Child Left Behind in the family.
Right. Let me go through a couple of these.
Yes.
The form is due at on a different date in every school. So if you want to know when you have to turn that in, you need to call your school.
So they have to go into the school office. The child does, presumably.
Well, or call
Okay.
or go in. And I always sent a letter with my own, asking them to notify me when they've taken the information out of the database.
So if I forget to call in October, November, then what happens?
It's too late, and you can't then do anything until the next school year.
And what happens to my information then for my child?
Everything is released automatically. It's automatic. So think again about opt-in, opt-out.
Yes.
We have an opt-out system. So that means if they don't receive from you an opt-out form, it's too late. All of the information about your student that year is automatically released.
All branches of the service.
Yes, all branches. So in every school, there's a different date wherein usually a school will ask that one recruiter come and share the information with all the armed forces.
Right.
So on a certain date, someone will come in and pick up the data. It's probably on a CD, I'm sure, but they come in and they pick it up.
So for the parent who has a 9th grader right now and they missed the date, what can they do for the following year?
Just make sure that you get your form in for the following year.
So it has to be done every year?
Yep.
Okay.
Unless you're Seattle School District or a school district that has passed through their own board, has decided that they are going to accept one form for the entire time that the student is in their school.
Now I know, Molly, that you've been involved with Know All You Can Know and other organizational efforts. You have some goals, and I'm sharing some goals that are on the screen now. Tell us about those goals, because I think they're important to know, because we've talked all the way from 2- and 3-year-old being influenced with war toys.
Yeah.
Now we're taking a look at, hey, it's not too long before they are experiencing war.
Right. I think it's really important to increase what students understand about enlistment, what you need to know before you enlist. The recruiters lie, and it's just, and I'm not trying not to put any loading on that word. There's pressure, tremendous pressure on recruiters. They have a quota, and they have to get so many kids to enlist. So they're going to tell any student anything that they think will help influence that student to enlist. So routinely, young people are told that there's $70,000 a year bonus, or there's a $50,000 a year bonus. And that's the kind of thing that's extremely disturbing. So it's not the way things really work. It's very difficult to get money for school. You have to meet the military's criteria. We use, and everyone should be familiar, young people should be familiar with the contract. And on the Army's contract, it says in very tiny print at the bottom, anything that you were told by a recruiter is null and void.
Null and void.
It's meaningless. Contractually, it means nothing. It's very important for students to know so that they can share with their friends. You can break your, quote, contract at any time before you actually go into basic training.
Do our school counselors and teachers know these kind of things?
Some do.
Some do.
So Washington Truth and Recruitment has done a great job. We go every year. We go to the school counselors convention, and it's been a wonderful opportunity. We have some really good materials to hand out that give a lot of this information to counselors. You have to remember the recruiters are also recruiting the people in the school offices. They're recruiting the counselors. So there's a lot of pressure.
Now you also worked recently with the PTA type of thing, or I know others have gone to a PTA association.
I'm going to interview Kim Howard with the Washington PTA. There is some legislation coming up this fall. Pay attention to our website. We're going to feature the exact wording of the legislation. But I think we could do a lot more in our schools. I'd like to highlight a couple of things. We have a couple of really wonderful counselors who are really exerting some leadership by limiting the presence of military recruiters in schools. There's no reason on earth why you can't do the same thing if you choose. She stays in the room, and she has a rule that the students have to contact the recruiters and not the other way around.
So they have the physical presence to the school, but then...
Right.
I see. Okay.
The other way in that school, she's done a wonderful job of making this an equitable issue. All recruiters are invited once a year to come in for the career fair. So the military recruiters are there, I'm there, there's all kinds of people are there representing schools and other alternative forms of employment. So I would also emphasize that we need folks who are interested in working with our youth around alternatives. Look at what's happening with our economy. Look what's happening with different options for students. When we've got low-income students and Hispanic students who really need support, any kids of color who need some support with what are they going to do after they get out of school. And if you've got anyone who's got special needs, has trouble using a computer, there are a lot of kids who need one-on-one support. And I think those are things that I'd like people to contact us so that we could start moving in that direction. Those are the young people we'd like to really work with.
Molly, we're living in uncertain economical times where there may not be jobs out there. Mm-hmm. And so my child is coming home and saying, Mom, they're giving a vocational assessment tool and I can take it. Tell us about this whole ASVAB.
Yeah. I'll do that quickly and then wind up. I think that ASVAB is what's important there. I am a licensed vocational rehabilitation counselor. And what's important to know is that is not a vocational aptitude.
It's not a vocational thing.
Test. It's not a test at all for anything other than being in the military. So let's wrap up with a couple things that are coming up this fall, real important. In October, we have a great week of activities, and I want everyone to go to our website and follow this. We're going to have Wayne Smith out here, who is an incredible Vietnam veteran, and he's going to talk about the cost of war. It will engage everybody.
We have that site up now, so go ahead and continue talking, and our viewing audience can see that website.
The other thing going on that week, we've got some wonderful students who put together a program called Iraqi Student Solidarity Committee. Look for ISSC. We will have a student from Iraq finishing her college education this fall here in Olympia at Evergreen. I'm really proud of what they've done. So there's some great activities. Antonio Yohaz will be here. We're going to learn a lot more about the tyranny of oil and what we can do about it. Go to our website, http://oli-wa.us/kayak.
And that kayak is for?
Know all you can know.
Know all you can know, yes.
We need volunteers. If you want to help us with getting information out to the schools, we're going to be going and visiting all our superintendents, all of our school board members.
So if I'm concerned about this counter-recruiting, and I'm a former educator and I want to get involved, how can I do that?
Just go to that website. There's a link under Contact Us, and my website is right there.
And tell us about this other website, the counter-recruitment website.
Just lots of good information. Lots of information that we've covered and more.
Excellent. You know, and there's another website that I want to let people know, and that is the National Youth and Militarization program that's put out by the American Friends Service Committee. This is a web shot, actually, of their website, Youth and Militarization. And they have some excellent materials that I know you've used, Molly, and I've used, and it's excellent. I really appreciate you coming in to share with me some of almost the horror stories or horror pictures of how our children are being recruited,
right.
How our toys, we have toys that are out there, that they prepare our kids to be an army of one. You know, and I love this slide. It says you can't be all that you can be if you're dead.
Yeah, that's the point.
And what I want to encourage our viewing audience to do is to get further information is to go to the VFP 109, the Rachel Corey chapter's website, VFP109RCC.org, and they can get further information. We encourage people to join us. We meet the third Sunday of the month, generally at Traditions Cafe. We also want to thank the studio people here at Thurston County Television for making this possible. We encourage you to watch and share with other people, particularly young parents who are looking at alternatives to war toys for their children and for the videos and the other things that would attract children to war. And then also just to be aware of how students are recruited into the military service today. One of the tenets of the Veterans for Peace is to share the ultimate costs of war with the people.
Right.
And I think if we can prepare people so that they would never have to be a veteran, that would be a perfect world. Thank you for watching, and we'll just we'll leave this website up as we close our program. Thank you.
Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their futures. Soldiers, speak